This boy's name is Erry and he really loves music. Every day he came to a record shop near his house just to hear music. He had two brothers named Pepe and Angelo. Their family was very poor. His father worked as a fake whiskey seller. Erry and his brothers often helped their father to make tea and put it inside a reused whiskey bottle. One day, Erry and his brothers asked their father to go with him to the market. At first, their father refused because he was afraid that if they were found out, they would get into trouble, but because they kept begging, he finally let them. At the market, Erry and his brothers easily tricked the police into buying their whiskey. His father's friend saw their ability to sell for the first time and was amazed. He asked what they wanted to be when they grew up, but Erry didn't seem to have any answer for that question and kept silent. 9 years later, in 1985, Erry had grown up. That night, Erry was trying to apply to be a DJ in a bar, but because of his unconvincing appearance and his rather weird stage name, his application was rejected. The next morning, Erry went to work in a record shop where he watched music shows when he was little. Erry was good at copying and mixing lots of songs from several cassettes and then making them into playlists on one cassette. When he was making cassettes that people ordered, Erry remembered what happened last night and decided to change his stage name from DJ Erry to Mixed by Erry. When he came home, Angelo told him that the police would carry out an operation to arrest a drug kingpin nearby. When he went to see, he accidentally bumped into 3 thugs who then beat him battered. Seeing his brother battered, Angelo beat one of the thugs with a makeshift weapon from stone and made him bleed. Thanks to that, he was put in prison. A few weeks later, Pep got married. The police allowed Angelo to come, even if only for a short time. When he met Erry, Angelo said that while he was in prison, his life was guaranteed because he could adapt and make friends with big criminals. Angelo advised Erry to be brave enough to take risks to be successful. 1 year had passed. At work, Erry was shocked to see all the stuff inside the record shop was brought outside. His boss then explained that he wanted to retire and had sold the shop. Erry was shocked. He was confused about where else to work. The boss then encouraged him, saying he was sure that with the talent that Erry had, one day he would be able to become a famous DJ. One day, Pepe and his friends were seen waiting for a ship carrying illegal cigarettes to be smuggled in, but when the ship had just arrived, the police suddenly showed up. They had no other choice but to run away. When he came home, he was shocked to find Erry. Erry told him that he had just lost his job and went there just to invite Pepe to do business together selling mixtapes made by him. Pepe was pessimistic about the offer. He was sure that Erry's mixtapes would definitely sell, but after calculating it, the profits were not worth the effort because the process of copying just one song took at least 1 hour, whereas in one cassette, there would be dozens of songs. Pepe's wife suggested they try to find a machine that could work faster instead of being pessimistic. The next day, the 3 went to the newsstand to look for machine advertisements. It turns out there was a machine that could copy songs in just 2 minutes, but because the price of the machine was very expensive, Pepe and Erry agreed to borrow money from a loan shark. And after getting a loan, a few days later, Erry was finally able to buy the machine and open his own shop. 2 weeks passed and Erry's shop was always busy with visitors. That day, Pepe was busy serving customers when a beautiful woman named Teresa came looking for song recommendations. Erry swiftly mentioned the song titles according to what Teresa asked. He promised to make a mixtape according to her liking when she returned. After she left, Erry couldn't help but be amazed by her beauty. That night, when Erry, Pep, and Pep's wife counted their income for 2 weeks, they were surprised that the profits collected could be immediately used to pay off all the debts, even still left with more than 3 million lira. Erry got the idea to borrow more money from loan sharks to help with developing their business. Hearing the idea, Pepe suddenly remembered his friends who were selling illegal cigarettes. The next day, Pepe invited Erry to meet his friends. Pepe offered his friends to work for him instead of selling illegal cigarettes. He promised bigger profits and assured them that the police wouldn't get in their way since the business was not breaking any law. Pepe told them to come to their shop if they decided to join. After getting a loan of 200 million lira, Erry and Pepe started producing as many mixtapes as possible in the shop, which they called Mixed by Erry. A week later, Pepe was confused because none of his friends came to the shop. Not long afterward, a man came in and called using the shop's telephone and gave the phone to Erry. It turned out that the person called was the owner of the illegal cigarette business. He couldn't accept that Erry had taken away his employees. The boss threatened to burn down his shop if he insisted. The threat made Erry worried and backed down from his intention. The next day, everyone gathered at their parents' house to welcome Angelo's freedom. At the dinner table, when their mother and Pepe's wife went to the kitchen, Pepe confided about yesterday's problems. Hearing his son's story, their father suggested the two invite Angelo to join. He was sure that since he was in prison, Angelo's courage had been formed and that might help to fight the cigarette boss. After joining that same night, Angelo immediately invited his two brothers to go to a firecracker factory to make bombs. After making the bomb, he then went to the illegal cigarette warehouse and threatened the owner by exploding the whole building. Fortunately, a few weeks after the bombing, the cigarette boss no longer dared to interfere with Erry's business anymore. Erry's shop had moved to a bigger place. He also had many employees and dozens of mixers that cost millions of lira. Months later, Erry's business became more and more successful, until finally the three of them were able to buy the latest Lamborghini. One night, Angelo took Erry to his favorite bar. Angelo said that now Erry could realize his dream of becoming a DJ and promote Erry's mixtape. When Erry went on stage, it turned out that everyone already knew him. Even one of the famous DJs praised his mixtapes. There, he also saw Teresa in the crowd. After the event, Erry invited Teresa to chat. He had a small talk and asked why she never came to the shop again. Teresa answered that she didn't know where the new shop was since they had moved without telling her. Teresa then took Erry's promise to make a mixtape for her. Erry then took Teresa to the place where the mixtapes were made. When they arrived at the place, Erry showed some recommendations for good song choices. At that moment, the two of them chatted at length until they got carried away. When Erry wanted to kiss Teresa, Pepe and Angelo suddenly came. They told Erry that one of the mafia bosses called and asked to meet them now. The three then went to the mafia boss's house. When they entered the house, a photographer was taking their photo. Soon, when they met the mafia boss, without further ado, the man explained that since Erry's business was in his territory, Erry had to follow the rules. The man offered a deal. He would protect Erry's business if he got a share of its profits. Hearing the offer just now, Erry asked for time to answer. On the way home, they argued about the offer. Erry and Angelo wanted to turn down the offer, but Pepe was too afraid that the mafia boss would harm their family. In the middle of the argument, they saw a mafia entourage from another city on its way to the house of the mafia boss. The next day, the clash between two mafia groups last night made it to the TV news. At the crime scene, a police officer named Ricciardi found a photo of Erry, Pep, and Angelo. He began to wonder who the three of them really were. 1 year passed, to be precise in 1987, when Angelo was celebrating the victory of his favorite football team. Pepe suddenly sent him a message saying that the mixtape warehouse was being raided and the police confiscated several of their mixers. Later in the afternoon, Erry and his two brothers had a meeting in their shop. They were upset because the police disturbed their business even though they didn't violate the law, since there were absolutely no laws on the prohibition of piracy. The next day, they went to the notary to register their business and taxes, so the police had no reason to bother them anymore. But to be safer, they also rented 3 apartments to store their mixers. Even though they were forced to play safe, the most important thing was that the business continued to run. A month passed, and as expected, Erry's business was running smoothly and safely. One night, when Ricciardi was patrolling on the side of the road, he met a seller of Erry's mixtapes. When he checked, Ricciardi was shocked at how there was a cassette containing a new song, even though the song wasn't officially released yet. The next morning, Ricciardi reported that this piracy syndicate must be dealt with immediately. If it is allowed to continue, it could spread further. However, it's a shame that the superiors didn't take it seriously. After all, the law didn't exist yet, so making too much of an exaggeration was not necessary. Ricciardi, who was annoyed, let out his emotions in the car. Even though he didn't get support, Ricciardi didn't want to keep silent about it and had made up his mind to finish the case. He then went to Erry's shop. There, Ricciardi shouted and told Erry to explain how he got access to new songs. Hearing him, Erry wasn't afraid at all. He even said that Ricciardi didn't have the right to ask, and he knew that he had the right not to answer. Ricciardi became even angrier. He swore that one day he would definitely drag him to prison with his own hands. Meanwhile, in Mila, the CEO of a cassette company named Arturo was reading the financial report for this month's sales. Arturo then called his financial staff and asked if the staff had made a mistake. He mentioned a sale of blank cassettes worth 5 billion lira. The staff answered that it was not a mistake. Erry's company actually ordered all that. The next day, Arturo invited Erry, Pepe, and Angelo to a luxurious lunch in the city of Milan. Arturo welcomed his 3 special clients well. He then told them that the reason he invited them was to offer cooperation. He would guarantee that Erry's shop's blank cassette needs were always met if Erry made his company the sole supplier and did not accept other companies' cassettes. Arturo also promised to give the cheapest price. Hearing that, Erry agreed. On the way home, Erry, Pepe, and Angelo were happily continuing to discuss the conversation earlier. Now they don't have to worry about looking for suppliers of blank cassettes anymore, but in the middle of the trip, Erry suddenly got out of the car and ran to the record shop across the street. Angelo and Pepe then rushed to catch up. At the shop, they saw a new device for storing songs called a CD. The 3 of them were languid to know that truth. In the evening, when they got home, Erry confided in his wife, Teresa, whom he finally married. After seeing the CD, Erry was languid and regretted ordering too many cassettes, and was so passionate about pursuing success that he didn't realize the development of technology. Because he was in a bad mood, he then asked if Teresa would still love him if it wasn't the owner of the shop. While smiling, Teresa cheered her husband. She answered that the real reason why she wanted to be with Erry was because she was still waiting for the mixtape that Erry once promised to make. She said that from the start, she didn't care who or what Erry did. She also didn't know why she fell in love with him. For her, love didn't need a reason. His wife's answer just now made Erry's heart calm. They both hoped that the appearance of this new CD wouldn't disrupt their cassette sales too much. 4 years later, in 1991, Erry and Teresa were seen baptizing their child. Arturo was also there. Arturo had become Erry's confidant and was even considered a family. After the event, Arturo hurriedly said goodbye and went to get ready because he had to attend a meeting of big music label companies from all over Italy the very next day. The next day, throughout the meeting, company leaders discussed the issue of piracy. They also said that their biggest enemy was Mixed by Erry since their sales somehow beat even the original song's sales. Luckily, they didn't have to worry anymore. After months of protesting against the government, their demands have finally been granted. Reportedly, starting that day, the copyright and piracy law will be ratified. After hearing this news, Arturo was just silent. He was afraid of being discovered that all this time his company had been the one supplying cassettes to help Mixed by Erry's piracy. It didn't take long before the news about the ratification of the piracy law was broadcast all over the media. After the meeting, Arturo immediately left. That night, he warned Erry that their business was in danger. Arturo advised that it would be better for this piracy business to stop for a while, but instead of casually obeying, Erry said everything was fine. He was sure that no matter how strict the regulations were, the piracy would definitely continue. They just had to be more careful. After that, Erry told Arthur to go home. Erry then met Pepe at the bar to discuss the problem that Arturo mentioned earlier. Pepe's answer was the same as Erry's to Arturo. Even though there were regulations against them, he was not worried because the law was still new and not yet perfect. The law on selling pirated mixtapes would put them behind bars. The only thing that could happen would be their mixers and cassettes confiscated. If they wanted to imprison them, the police had to dismantle the entire business line or at least have key witnesses. If playing it safe, when they were caught, it would be easy for them to fight against the law. Hearing the explanation, Erry was a little relieved, so he didn't think too much about it. Erry then called Teresa and asked her to watch a music festival outside the city with his brothers. Without realizing it from another place, Ricciardi had tapped the phone and overheard the conversation. The next day at the music festival, from a distance, Ricciardi and his men were ready in a nearby building. Before entering the venue, Erry called someone first. Ricciardi ordered his men to hear the conversation. He was sure that Erry would definitely be in the middle of a transaction of buying new songs to be pirated. If he was caught red-handed, the police would have strong evidence to imprison him, but it turned out that Erry was just calling her mother. Ricciardi was annoyed because his effort once again failed. After calling, Erry was shocked to find Arturo there, who, unlike usual, Arturo wasn't there to greet him at all. He just stared at him with a strange look. Suddenly, Erry realized something. When he looked around the building, there were a lot of suspicious people staring at him. Erry was in despair. He finally realized that maybe Arturo's words yesterday were true. No matter how clever and hard he tricked the police, sooner or later he would still get caught. Erry then met Teresa. When the event started without saying a word, Erry kissed Teresa as if it was a goodbye kiss. The next afternoon, when Ricciardi was looking at cassettes and CDs of pirated songs mixed by Erry, suddenly his subordinates told him that a man named Arturo was waiting in his office. Arturo was willing to be a key witness to dismantle Erry's entire business line as long as his company was given law immunity and freed from all lawsuits. On the other hand, Erry, Pepe, and Angelo were seen discussing with their father their income for the last 2 weeks, which had collected 2 billion lira. Pepe then asked if their father was proud of his son's success. Instead of answering, their father asked his 3 sons to help make the fake whiskey. At that moment, they all looked happy while reminiscing about the past. No matter how great and mature they were in their father's eyes, they were still his sons. That night, as if he had a vision, Erry kept his promise to Teresa that had long been forgotten. Before reporting himself to the police, he made a song compilation cassette for his beloved wife, and soon after that, the police raided their house and arrested him. When he had just entered prison, Erry, Pepe, and Angelo were warmly welcomed by all the prisoners. It turned out that the fans who enjoyed the compilation of their songs were spread even in prison. A few weeks later, the day of the trial arrived. Before entering the courtroom, the lawyer asked Erry not to plead guilty. The main thing was that it was settled because this law was still not perfect. They would definitely be free and could continue their piracy business again. Hearing the words, Erry had a dilemma. On one hand, he really wanted to be free, but on the other hand, he also wanted to live in peace. He was very tired of the piracy business, which the police kept dealing with. Not long after the trial started, Teresa was seen present on the bench. The judge read a lot of multi-layered lawsuits. The judge asked if Erry would plead guilty. When he looked in his wife's face, Erry's heart felt calm. Erry answered that he just wanted to be a DJ.